On a hotel escalator, an elderly woman dressed in a wedding gown holds a red diary in her hands. As she nears her final moments, she recalls the day she married and entered the hotel with her husband. Meanwhile, Carlos arrives at his apartment and finds his younger brother, Oliver, in a state of anxiety. Carlos tries to reassure him by mentioning that their mother has loaned him a substantial amount of money, so they won't have to resort to crime anymore. However, Oliver remains uneasy. Before he can explain the source of his distress, Detective Marco barges in. Carlos, panicked, insists they've done nothing wrong, but Marco has already coerced a confession from Oliver. As Oliver pleads for forgiveness, Carlos demands an arrest warrant, but Marco doesn't have one. Nevertheless, Marco insists on dragging them to the station at gunpoint. This causes Carlos to panic and fight back. With Oliver's help, they manage to push Marco aside, and they flee toward the stairwell, trying to escape. Marco immediately follows them, and in the chaos, his hand accidentally discharges, shooting Carlos in the leg, causing him to collapse. As Marco wonders how it happened, Oliver rushes to his brother's side, screaming for help, but no one responds. An explosion rings out in the distance, but there's no sign of emergency. Carlos' wound bleeds heavily, and Oliver ties his hoodie around it to stop the bleeding. Fuming with anger, Oliver attempts to exact revenge on Marco, but Marco shoves him against the wall, silencing him with threats. When Oliver suggests they take Carlos to the hospital, Marco refuses, insisting that they can treat him at the police station. Reluctantly, Oliver helps Carlos to his feet, and the three continue down the stairs. As they move, Marco finds loose hairs on his clothes, puzzled by their origin. When they finally reach a door, they find it locked. They continue walking, but it seems as though the floor is repeating itself. The three of them look up and down, realizing that the stairwell appears to stretch endlessly. Marco commands them to stay put as he runs down the stairs, frantically trying all the doors, but they're all locked. After much running, he finds himself face to face with Carlos and Oliver again, as though they've never moved. Carlos wonders aloud if he's hallucinating due to the pain. Marco takes the stairs once more, but the cycle continues, and he finds the brothers again. In a moment of desperation, Marco throws his keys into the center of the stairwell, and they fall back to him from above. Realizing that they're trapped in an endless loop, Marco points his gun at the brothers, accusing them of giving him something illegal. They assure him they're just as trapped as he is. Oliver can't get any signal on his phone, and shouting for help proves useless. As Carlos groans in pain, Oliver insists on removing the bullet, but Carlos refuses, worrying about infection and trusting Oliver's lack of medical expertise. Marco, in the meantime, uses a fire extinguisher to break open the vending machine and get some water. Oliver takes a bottle to clean Carlos' wound. For hours later, the trio remains stuck, and Marco opens his wallet to reveal a family photo. He finds a tiny card he doesn't recognize, which he angrily tears up and throws away. He then admits to having some personal use drugs and gives them to Carlos, hoping they'll ease his pain for a while. As Carlos drifts into unconsciousness, Marco and Oliver raid the vending machine for food. They sit together to talk, and Marco shares that he was supposed to celebrate his 15th wedding anniversary tonight. Oliver, grim and still angry, threatens to kill Marco if Carlos dies, then checks his bag for anything useful, but finds little. The next morning, Carlos is barely alive, and with his final breath, he tells Oliver to appreciate life and live fully, something he never could. Carlos dies in Oliver's arms. As Oliver cries, Marco inspects the vending machine, realizing that it's restocked itself. Marco's mind is unraveling, and he tries to comfort Oliver, pointing out that the shooting was an accident and that they're both losing their sanity. Meanwhile, far away in the countryside, Daniel is teaching his sister Camila a magic trick, while their stepfather, Roberto, watches. Their mother, Sandra, reminds them to finish packing for their road trip to visit their biological father. Daniel packs his hamster and a deck of mini-playing cards, and Sandra also asks him to grab Camila's spare inhaler. On the way, Roberto picks up a random piece of bamboo and throws it out the window. The family stops at a gas station, and Roberto gives Camila juice, even though she's allergic to sugar. After using the bathroom, Camila gives her inhaler to Roberto to keep safe. Soon, Sandra finds out about the juice, and she scolds Roberto for his carelessness. They get back in the car, but Camila starts to have an asthma attack. Roberto accidentally steps on her inhaler, destroying it. To make things worse, Daniel forgot the spare inhaler. They decide to head back home for another one, but as they drive, they hear an explosion in the distance. Returning to the gas station, they find it deserted, and Sandra steals some allergy medicine for Camila without paying. As they continue their journey, Daniel notices that they keep passing the same sign and gas station. The road feels like it's repeating itself. Roberto believes the road has looped, but Sandra insists on continuing, desperate to help Camila. Time and again, they pass the same signs, and the clocks seem to be frozen. Eventually, Camila passes out, and Sandra is overwhelmed with grief. Roberto decides to walk off through the field, hoping for a new direction, but Sandra, frantic, drives away with the kids, unaware that Daniel and Camila are left behind. As Daniel carries his unconscious sister, he watches Sandra repeat the loop. He reaches the road sign, and on his return, he watches as Sandra drives by again. Daniel lies next to Camila and, helplessly, watches her die. Roberto eventually returns, confirming that every direction is part of the loop. 35 years later, Marco is an old man, unable to walk, crawling through the endless stairs. Oliver, in his middle age, has stayed healthy by exercising and keeping himself busy with books and a music player. He's also made a shower out of water bottles and keeps a growing collection of things from the vending machine. Marco's side of the stairwell is more disheveled, and Oliver often helps him with basic tasks. They have both gone mad in their isolation. Oliver prays over Carlo's skeleton, keeping track of the days in a diary written on the wall. The old woman finally dies on the escalator, and someone takes her hamster. Meanwhile, on the endless road, 35 years pass for the family. Roberto is now an old man, living in the car, while Sandra has become unresponsive. Daniel, now an adult, lives in the field with his hamster, creating a makeshift camp. He tries to keep his mind occupied by listening to music, walking in nature, and playing cards with his hamster. One day, Roberto finds Camila's plushie and leaves it near Daniel's camp. Upon seeing it, Daniel seeks Roberto out, and Roberto comments that Daniel doesn't remember Sandra. He's right. She has long forgotten everything. Roberto seems to have something important to say to Daniel, but forgets it. Just then, both Roberto and Marco experience an agonizing headache, signaling the end of their time in the loop. They realize none of this is real. It's all an alternate version of their lives. They explain that they triggered the loop when they caused a tragic incident in their past lives, and now they're stuck in an emotional hell. They advise Daniel and Oliver not to make the same mistake or risk starting a new cycle. Before they die, both Roberto and Marco give Oliver and Daniel a red diary filled with life notes. Daniel chooses to bury Roberto, then notices a police car he hasn't seen before. He checks it out and, after a moment, returns to his camp, grabs his hamster, burns the rest of his things, and gets in the car. But as he touches it, his memories fade. He drives off with a new identity as Detective Marco, restarting the loop. Meanwhile, Oliver, slowly losing his grip on reality, steps into an elevator and finds a uniform, starting a new life as Carl, a hotel bellhop. A married couple boards the elevator, and after a series of mishaps, the groom gets stung by a bee, triggering a new loop. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, and make sure to subscribe for more awesome content. Drop a comment below to let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay awesome.